And let's drive on over to Ann Arbor. How about our good friend, Alex Zilkowski, our Wolverine insider here at Woodward Sports, brought to you by our friends at Skinny Butcher. Intern Alex Zilkowski. How are you, young man? How are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Wrapped up another week of school today, and now we have a great game tomorrow that should, take a few years off my life. So
yeah. Okay, let's.
I'm surprised he's not out there. The kid travels everywhere.
Let's start there. So Michigan in Washington, a pseudo rematch of the national championship game. Both these rosters have been depleted of the players that played on those teams, but nonetheless. How much confidence do you think Michigan got out of last week's win against Minnesota?
I think Michigan got more confidence actually out of the week before against USC than last week at Minnesota. After the game, in the press conference and everything, the team and the players, they were kind of happy because they got a win, but Sharon and everyone else, they were not happy how they really let Minnesota back into that game. So even though win's a win, it's good to keep rolling. We're 2-0 in the Big Ten, and we can still win the Big Ten, go to that. But this is a really big week, and I'm not sure if last week's win did a ton for the team's confidence.
Talk about that second half of the game against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Obviously, no Will Johnson out there, so teams are going to take chances on the outside now. But it just looked like whatever it was, the defense didn't respond in that second half, and they almost allowed them in offense as well. Are you confident where Michigan is after the USC game, or if at that Minnesota game you're kind of like, I want to see a little bit more of this?
I want to see a little bit more out of Michigan. I definitely saw growth out of the team last week, especially even though it didn't reflect it necessarily in the stat book. I think we saw some better things out of the offense. But on the defense, one of the things I think Michigan is really feeling the effects of is, one, the offense not being able to sustain drives. Before Michigan's second-to-last drive of the game last Saturday, they only had 2 drives of 5+ plays. And then also, we just don't have as much depth as we did last year. If you look at this 2023 Michigan roster from a year ago, they pretty much had 2 full starting lineups of defensive players. When you have guys like Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart coming off the bench, you have an absolutely stacked roster. But now we're seeing Michigan's players play a lot more snaps at starters, and teams are kind of adjusting to it. At the end of the game last week, Minnesota started running some up-tempo, and I could see that be a trend for a lot of teams this year, where if this Michigan offense is going to keep the defense on the field a lot, they're going to use tempo and try to tire them out more. So it's really important they get off the field quickly, try to force 3 and outs, but then they need some help from their offense in this complementary brand of football that Michigan has really built its identity around the past few years.
Alex, let me ask you a question. Yeah, you talk about the idea. Dang it! I was watching this and I freaking lost my thought. With the offense, here it is. You talk about all the players that left last year, so it left a big hole in the depth that they had on offense. How much of that is acceptable to excuse Kirk Campbell for? You look at Kirk Campbell, it doesn't seem like he's able to establish what he's got going on so far. How much of that is the depth, and how much of it is the time? It's only been, 5 games into his new offensive career with the University of Michigan Wolverines.
I mean, there's blame to go around everywhere. I think the offensive line is starting to gel more in the run game. We've seen it. They've looked better the past few weeks. Evan Link and Dominic Jadis are kind of liabilities in pass protection, just to put it how it is. But at least right now, we are seeing Alex Orji, outside the pick to Loveland, he isn't really putting the ball in danger that much. And even on that pick, it was because he had Loveland open, he had Devin Evers open for a touchdown, but he had a sidestep, almost a free rusher that Evan Link let through, and that let the safety come over to intercept from Colson Loveland. And I really think a big thing that really isn't helping Kirk Campbell is, outside of Colson Loveland, no one on this Michigan team is really doing a good job getting any separation or helping out Alex Orji. So I think it is one thing where you're not going to be able to change the talent you have mid-season. No one's going to suddenly become great. But it really is on Kirk Campbell, the rest of the coaching staff, to really find a way to scheme up guys who are not named Colson Loveland get open. Maybe that means more just rub routes and see how many you can get away without a penalty. Maybe go look back at the Rose Bowl and look at all the short run replacement passes you did. But Michigan's going to have to get creative to find some spark going, especially through the air. Because right now we're 18th out of 18 in the Big Ten in passing yards and 130 out of 134 in college football.
Wow.
And you just can't win games like that long-term sustainably.
Who the hell's worse? 4 teams worse than us?
Yeah, it's
anyway,
crazy.
that's got to be.
Oh, he even knows.
Yeah. Who are they? Who are they?
I'm pretty sure it's Kennesaw State, Kent State, and Iowa, which
God
I
bless
saw an
it.
interesting tweet this week from Bill Connolly, who does S&P Plus for ESPN, and both Kennesaw State and Kent State would be underdogs to both Grand Valley and Ferris State. That's how bad they are.
Go Lakers, go Grand Valley, rank her up. Okay, hey.
Michigan's with some elite company there.
obviously, the national championship game against Washington. That's a long time ago. But Donovan Edwards had his game in that game. And are we going to see that Donovan Edwards ever again? Is this the game that we get to see him maybe show us what he has and show us that this guy should be a draft pick in the NFL, a high draft pick?
I'd argue we've seen that Donovan Edwards one time this year again in the USC game because, quite frankly, Donovan Edwards, he doesn't have great ball carrier vision and he struggles to get through contact. So when he has a perfectly blocked play, he can house it. He has the best home run speed of anyone on this roster. We saw it in his touchdown against USC. And that's the way his 2 touchdowns against Washington went last year. That's the way his 2 touchdowns against Ohio State went in the shoe a few years ago. So it really comes down to the fact if our O-line can really gel, which they are starting to get better, especially in the run game. And Washington's a middle-of-the-road defense, so I certainly think it is a possibility that we do see Donovan Edwards finally rip a long one off. But what I really want to see is, we've been talking about this for years, I feel, is his ability as a pass catcher. And I really feel like this is the time for Kirk Campbell and the Michigan offensive staff to really find a way to get that incorporated. Maybe use 2-back sets or something like that. But this ability's been talked about for years with Donovan Edwards. And so now in our biggest area of need. And that's probably the biggest thing I want to see out of Michigan this week.
Hey, Alex, pleasure to talk to you. And Michigan faces probably the best quarterback they've seen so far this year, man. Will Rogers, he's sitting at 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. There is no way that he can really beat this Michigan defense, can he?
He certainly can beat the Michigan defense. He's having a great season so far. He has 10 touchdowns with no interceptions, almost an 80% completion percentage, and on throws at 10 yards or less, he's completed about 88% of the passes, I think. So there is certainly a way where he can beat Michigan. Luckily, though, their tackle has not had a great season so far. I think this Michigan D-line will be able to get home. But probably the soundest thing for Michigan this year, the most important thing, is they're going to be sound tackling this week. Because Washington is a great team when they get the ball in their hand. Over half of Will Rogers' passing yards have come after the catch by his receivers. And this isn't passing related. But 700 of their 900 rushing yards have all occurred after contact. So for Michigan, it is so crucial this week to swarm the ball, make a sound tackle. Even if you're not the guy to bring them down yourself, make sure you slow it down until the reinforcements come. Because if you can really prevent Washington from advancing the ball anymore after the catch or after contact on the run, this offense will get shut down.
Talking to Alex Zilkowski, our Wolverine insider, brought to you by our friends at Skinny Butcher. Alex, I want a 2-part question about the quarterback. How much improvement can that passing game have under Alex Orji? That's the first part of my question. I'll let you answer that first, and then I've got a second part to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I do not have super high hopes for the passing offense this year, but it doesn't need to be a unit that can completely take over and win the games. I brought up the stat last week, and in the last 6 games of last year's season, J.J. McCarthy only averaged 140 yards a game. So we're not asking for Alex Orji to come out and become some Heisman-level quarterback. We just need this Michigan passing game to elevate and make it so that teams can't solely key in on the run. But I do not think all the problems are on Alex Orji, to be honest. I think there have been some bad days in pass protection. And outside of Colson Loveland, no one's getting separation consistently, and that just makes it so much harder to play quarterback. So I really think, we have to – the offense can get better under Orji. We can see improvement. They just have to get creative and, as was talked about all offseason, use him as a runner. We see it with the Baltimore Ravens. Teams just freeze for a second because they're Lamar Jackson running, and Michigan needs to take a page out of the Ravens' book once again and try to incorporate that onto their offense.
Alex, how much buzz was in Ann Arbor this week? I don't know if we can confirm this or not. I have heard that Dave Portnoy and Sharon Moore have had a conversation this week. Portnoy went on social media and said he will pledge $3 million of NIL money to a quarterback at Michigan.
Every year.
I believe the report is that Portnoy and Sharon Moore have spoken. How much buzz in Ann Arbor regarding that?
Yeah, that's honestly been probably the most talked about thing with Michigan football around campus the past few weeks. Everyone's super excited, especially after having a first-round pick at quarterback last year and the fall off. The prospect of, who knows, we could be going in the portal, could be a 5-star recruit from Belleville who comes to Michigan to get that $3 million. But it is exciting having the prospect that this, for years with NIL, I feel like Michigan fans, we've all shared this feeling that Michigan is such a big fan base, such a wealthy, successful one as well. We all kind of expected NIL to come and be our thing, have this Michigan money can come out and just shoot us for all loaded rosters. And it's nice to kind of finally see this old school sentiment of NIL being a bad thing. You shouldn't be the players kind of fade away, because at the end of the day, we all care about watching a winning football team more than we do about how things used to go. So if Dave Portnoy really is giving $3 million, that's great, and everyone will come to love it with time.
Alex, I wanted to broaden the conversation and talk about the Big Ten as a whole. We sit almost at the halfway point of the year. How does the Big Ten look to you so far this year? What are you seeing?
So far to me, it looks like Ohio State's conference to lose. Unfortunately, at this point, they've looked great. Their game tomorrow, I think, is going to be super telling because they're playing Iowa, who is by far and away the most stylistically similar team to Michigan in the Big Ten right now. They have elite defense, and their offense is carried by an elite running back in Caleb Johnson, who, if it weren't for Ashton Jeanty, would probably be considered the best back in college football this year. And statistically and play style-wise, him and Kalel Mullings are super similar. He's just had the lion's share carries the whole year. So I think that's going to be one of the most telling games of the season tomorrow, is how well Iowa holds up in the shoe. And if they can find any weaknesses in this Ohio State team, that will help Michigan down the line. Then outside of that, I actually think Penn State's for real this year. I know many years they're a very overhyped team. People get mad at James Franklin because he can't win the big game, but they get Ohio State in Happy Valley this year, and I feel like this is their year to beat them. Their defense is playing great, and I really think Drew Aller is playing really well as well. So
they got a case schedule.
Race for the Big Ten. They do have a very easy schedule as well. So I ultimately think right now, if I had to pick, it'd be either Ohio State most likely wins Big Ten, with Penn State and Oregon being in that second tier. But we're going to have some really interesting games coming down the stretch here this season.
Hey, tonight we got a game. Oregon hosting Michigan State. Big point spread, 23.5. Do you think the Spartans can go into Eugene and hang with them?
I do not. Sorry for all the Spartan viewers. Aiden Childs did not look great against Boston College, and he's going to play in one of the loudest stadiums in college football at Autzen. The turnovers have been a problem, and their O-line has allowed a lot of tackles for loss. But I just think the biggest thing is I've been waiting for this Oregon offense to really come alive. We read about it all offseason long about how good Dylan Gabriel is. He's the leader for almost every active passing career stat of college quarterbacks right now. And they have such an elite receiving core with guys like Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson. So it's really something where I've been waiting for weeks for Oregon to finally come alive and look like the Titan we all expected them to be. And I kind of think tonight's the night they remind everyone they're one of the big dogs in the national picture of college.
I know you're our Michigan insider, Alex, but what's your take on the Spartans this year? Are they better? Are they heading in the right direction?
Yes, I do think Michigan State's completely heading in the right direction. Jonathan Smith has been playing a lot more fundamental. They just look like a more complete team when you watch them. It might not be a year they're competing for the Big Ten or anything, but I think they're on a good track long-term under Coach Smith.
Hey, Alex, a question. Are you worried in terms of University of Michigan versus Michigan State when they play that? Michigan State have played Oregon on the road. They also have played Ohio State. Meanwhile, Michigan played a Texas team, and the Michigan team is much different than they were against Texas. Are you worried that Michigan State has a little bit more experience in the big game this year?
No, that's not something that really worries me. Yeah, like I said, they've played Ohio State, but we're going on the road, too, this week to the West Coast. Husky Stadium's a very loud stadium.
Oh, I played there.
Or Washington might not be as good as Oregon, but it's going to be a tough road test. We have been battle-tested through. Texas didn't succeed, but USC's a tough game. So that big game experience, it doesn't really concern me right now. And I really think right now in the rivalry, the past few years, the hatred's been so high that I'm not really worried about that experience. I think it's going to be a game that comes down to energy when it is all said and done.
Hey, here's a funny story, Ryan. So I played out in Washington my freshman year, and at this time, Alex, I wasn't playing a lot, maybe 3-4 snaps a game. And this particular game against Washington, I didn't really see any snaps. So, Ryan, you know how you always crack jokes about the little kids playing with flies in the outfield? The backdrop of Washington Stadium is so beautiful. It's like one of a kind in the country, and it's right on the backdrop of Lake Washington. I was just staring out into the abyss of, like, the lake and the water and the air and the atmosphere. I'm just looking and looking. Soup slapped, I almost cursed.
Soup Campbell.
Shout out to Eric Campbell. He slapped the hell out of the back of my head. He was like, "What are you doing?" I was, what? They were trying to call for me to go in and play. I actually missed going in on a play.
Oh, my God.
Looking at the surroundings, man. It's massive. 77,000 fans up and down, and you got the water out there. It's a beautiful place.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful place to play.
Just gorgeous.
That's awesome, man. Hey, Alex, great stuff. So happy to have you here, and we really appreciate it. Enjoy the game tomorrow, my friend.
Appreciate you, Alex.
All right, thanks, Alex. Hey, check out Skinny Butcher. They're our presenting sponsor for our Wolverine Wednesday, even though today is Friday, our Wolverine Insider, Alex Zilkowski. We absolutely appreciate them.
That kid's as good as anyone on the Big Ten Network.
I'm telling you. You know how Jim Leland, and Jim Leland said this back in 2006 when he was with Verlander and Zamaya, and those guys were so young. He said, when I ask those guys to come into the game, I don't ask to check their IDs.
Yep.
He said, I'm not checking their licenses. I'm not checking their ID before I insert them into the lineup. Same with A.J. Hinch and Jackson Jobe. Yeah. I'm not checking this kid's ID as he comes to the lineup. There is no more knowledgeable person about Michigan football than that kid right there, Alex Zilkowski. It's just a fact.
Big Ten football.
I will go to battle.
Me too.
And I would put my life on the line that he knows more about Michigan football than you do.
Oh, amen.
Not you. I'm just saying you in general.
No, amen.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible.
He does his homework, but he also is invested in the sport. He's invested in the team. He's invested in everything he does. He's very passionate.
Absolutely.
It's always good to see people passionate about what they do. Shout out to Alex.
Big shout out.
Good job,
in terms of, I'm not talking about like former players or some of it, but I'm talking about in terms of media or just regular Joe Schmoes like me or anybody else.
We can get educated too.
Huh?
We can get educated too as former players.
That's right.
Some of the stuff he says, I'm like, oh, really?
No doubt.
Put him against any beat writer.
No, 100%.